Hi and welcome back. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Valentina and I just recently moved from Canada to Spain. And this spring for March break, I took my kids to a little Euro trip, and here are the major lessons that I learned. First of all, a little bit of backstory. So me and my partner and my two toddlers, we had to go to Croatia to bring a car that was purchased a couple of years back so we can use it in Spain because it's a much smaller car. It's really good on gas. It's a Peugeot. It's much more maneuverable in a smaller country as Spain. So what we did is we just bought one-way tickets and we flew to Croatia, and then we spent a little bit of time with family, which was amazing.
Bravo, Gabriel, bravo. Eat. Ajde, eat nicely, sit nicely.
And then after about 5 to 6 days, we packed up and we left. So lesson number one is don't bring too many cooked things. I know family tends to give you, especially Eastern European families are very much keen on that, to give you a food that was cooked prior. First of all, it's messy. Second of all, it's not as appealing when you're sitting in a car. Snacks work much better. I know it's not as healthy, but you can always have healthy snacks. It's just that cooked food, when you stay in the car for too long, I wouldn't recommend it. Another thing that was really pleasant for us, we were traveling through most of the EU countries, and if you travel through EU countries, there's no borders. So it takes that much less time and the trip is that much more pleasant because you don't have to do passport control. We went from Croatia to Italy and from Italy to France and then from France to Spain, and there was no border control. It was definitely a big plus to the trip. Traveling with toddlers, let me tell you, that was a challenge on its own. Besides us as grown-ups, and we understand the logic behind this trip, for toddlers it's really hard to explain to them, even if my toddlers, well, one of them is 5 and the other one is 3. It was pretty hard to explain to them why are we in the car for such a long time. So unfortunately, when you travel with toddlers, because it's almost 2,000 kilometers, we were planning on making just a couple of stops, maybe just one night to sleep. It didn't happen. We had to stop 2 nights. We stopped one night in Italy and then we stopped one night in France, which was pleasant. If you book everything in advance, make sure that you book Airbnb, because hotels, they're usually much smaller if you travel on the coast and there's no one past 11 p.m. So if you decide to put in more hours and travel a little bit longer, you will not be able to check in. Unfortunately, it happened to my parents because they were traveling last year through Europe as well, and they booked the hotel, but by the time they made it, they wanted to put in a couple more hours while they were driving. There was no one at reception, so they had to sleep in the car, literally. So to avoid that, especially if you're traveling with toddlers, make sure you book an Airbnb and make sure that you communicate with the host and tell them that you are going to be coming late and how to check in, where are the keys. So then if you do check in at 11, 12 at night, you won't have to bother anyone that late, and then people are actually going to get back to you. So one of the things that really is surprising to me is no matter how much entertainment you have for your toddlers, they will get bored. They will start screaming, they will get annoyed.
No, don't touch me.
So what we did is we made like pit stops every 2.5 hours just to stretch our legs, which added to the trip, obviously, but because there was no borders, it was pleasant. You know, it was just, 5 to 10 minutes of walk, 5 to 10 minutes if anyone needs to use the washroom. So yeah, add at least 2 hours to your calculations when you're traveling with toddlers. Another thing that I learned, never buy food from the gas stations, even if it's Europe and you think that it's much healthier. I wouldn't suggest it. What we did is we actually stopped at coffee shops or whatever we would see a restaurant on the road off the highway. We would make a stop, but we were not eating at the gas stations. We would only stop to put gas in the car or use the washroom or maybe get a coffee. But food-wise, no. Always be aware of your surroundings. Make sure you keep your children next to you, especially if you don't know the language of the country you're traveling through. Unfortunately, child abduction is on a rise everywhere in Europe, so always make sure you have eyes on your children. What I did is I got those AirTags for my children, and then we got from Amazon like bracelets, and then we put the AirTags and we made sure that they're always within our vicinity. If one parent was using the washroom, the other co-parent was just watching them. So yeah, safety first, keep your children next to you. A beautiful thing that I discovered as well is the drive from Croatia to Italy is beautiful. Croatia has many mountains and lakes, and it feels a bit more challenging, especially for someone who never drove on that road. So my partner was a little bit uneasy, so he preferred to drive from Croatia to Italy during the day. So we left at like 4 a.m. and the sun was up at like 5:30, so it was safe and it was pleasant. And then the drive through Italy doesn't have as many mountains, was much more straight up. It felt like driving through North America. We didn't even feel, because there's no border, you would just start seeing signs in Italian, or there would be a big sign saying welcome to Italy. And then the drive from Italy to France was beautiful again. France has more mountains and it was quite an experience. French food, amazing. Their baguettes, their croissants, everything they do. What we discovered again as being from North America, that they don't actually serve breakfast like eggs and bacon like we are used to. We Googled a breakfast place and we got off the highway, because my kids are very much used to eating eggs and bacon in the morning because they're very North American. And we found out that there's barely any breakfast shops, because what they do for breakfast, most people in Europe, is just have a croissant and a coffee. No one eats like a salty breakfast. So we stopped at this place and we asked if they would do like bacon and eggs for us. And the girl was like, some French girl, obviously, it was in France. She's like, oh, you North Americans, we don't do that here. Like, we are used to having, and we are raised to having just like a very light breakfast. And they made breakfast for us, but you know, it's another culture shock that we're not used to when we travel through Europe. Keep your children entertained up to a point. Other than that, if you're traveling through a beautiful country, they should actually look around. These are memories. These are core memories that are made at that age. I know they're not going to remember a lot of it, but I'm thinking bits and pieces are going to stick with them. So don't feel the need to necessarily keep them always in front of their screen or coloring or doing something. Make up a game. We were counting the cars, we were counting the mountains, looking at the colors, at the license plates. So come up with something that would keep their head up and away from whatever games and whatever coloring and whatever screens you brought with you, so they can actually look around and understand where they are and that we're actually traveling. And what I was doing is I would Google the area that we are in and I would tell them stories. Oh, this is where the first king of France was born, or this is where your relatives were living at some point in their life. If you don't have enough stories, just come up with stories that will keep them entertained and will keep them much more engaged in a trip and with you, much more present. Another big thing, especially if you're traveling in spring, it's much lighter weather in Europe. You don't need to have a lot of things with you. You don't need to have a lot of jackets, a lot of sweaters. The car felt really heavy because we brought a lot of things that were literally unnecessary, and we didn't even use half of the things we brought with us. When I was traveling before from North America, from Canada to Europe, I would always bring a lot of things. Europeans travel much more lighter and they're much more relaxed when it comes to attire, to how you look, to how you're dressed. So just travel light. It definitely helps. Even if you're with toddlers, there's stores everywhere, there's gas stations everywhere. You can always buy anything extra that you need, but save some space so there's space in the car so you don't have too many things in your way. Make sure you have some extra light blankets and the pillows for the kids. It really did help when they would pass out for their naps. I was trying to keep them awake and entertained so they would sleep at night, mostly not during the day, but they would still pass out, you know, because they're toddlers. I would pass out. So grateful for my partner. He drove us and he brought us safe and sound through so many countries. Keep the speed limit at bay, because even Italian and French police, I found them a little bit more on point, a little bit more, you know, checking your speed limits. Croatia was a little bit lighter on that, but Italy and France, I find that you have to really make sure you follow the rules and regulations, especially if you don't speak the language. You don't want to get in trouble, you want to be safe. So unless you have some kind of connections and you won't get in trouble, make sure you keep the speed limits. Make sure you have insurance that covers you through all of the countries. It really does help in case anything happens. Thank God nothing happened with us. But generally, try to look at it it as a fun treat. We got annoyed and the kids started screaming at some point. I was opening the windows for them and making sure that the noise doesn't stay within the car so our ears don't get plugged, but try to keep them entertained, but like with normal games. Keep them off the screens as much as you can. I brought an iPad with me. I'm not a perfect parent. Obviously, I got a really cool holder from Amazon and they watched a couple of cartoons as we were driving, but generally it's much easier to keep them entertained with something that involves you as opposed to just, keeping them in the back and you're just at the front. So make it as a family trip. We were singing songs, which was another really fun way of time passing for us. Okay, I think I went for too long when it comes to this video. It's fun. We did have fun. It was enjoyable. It was definitely an unexpected experience because we didn't plan this too much time in advance. It was a very spontaneous road trip, but no regrets. And it generally really taught us how to get along with each other, how to be respectful of each other, how to not get on each other's toes. Even if my children are young, I would tell them, someone is driving and the person who's driving really needs patience because we need to be safe. So you need to reason with your toddlers as well and explain to them how big of a responsibility it is to drive so many people in a car. And I'm sure they will understand it if you're being calm, if you're being collected and you're not raising your voice, and if you're enjoying the trip. Please do comment, let me know if you ever did a Euro trip with your toddlers. How did it turn out? What kind of entertainment do you use? And I will see you in my next video.